Why do so many people believe that the modern state of Israel is the biblical homeland of the ancient Israelites? Yet the people who live there today look nothing like the people described in the Bible. Why does history, archaeology, and even genetics paint a picture that's far more complicated, and in some cases, is far more controversial than what we're told in school or in the media? And here's the real question. If the original Israelites were a people of the ancient Middle East, how did so many white Europeans come to be recognized as the Jews of today? This isn't just a history lesson, it's a journey into identity, politics, and power. And you need to hear it before the narrative is sealed forever. Asterisk. The year is 1948. The world watches as the state of Israel is declared. The headlines read, "The Jews return home." But here's the first uncomfortable truth. The majority of those arriving on the shores of Palestine were not from the deserts of Arabia. It's the hills of Judea or the banks of the Jordan River. They were from Poland, Russia, Germany, and Eastern Europe. Ashkenazi Jews with pale skin, blue eyes, and European features made up the bulk of the new state's population. But how does that connect to the ancient Israelites? Are these the same people, or are we witnessing a historical replacement? Asterisk, let's rewind over 2,000 years. The ancient Israelites, according to both archaeology and biblical descriptions, were a Semitic people, similar in appearance to their neighbors, darker skin, curly hair, Middle Eastern features. The Hebrew Bible itself places them in close relation to the ancient Egyptians, Ethiopians, and other African and Arabian peoples. So what happened? How did a people described in Scripture as blending into the nations of Africa and Arabia become a population with overwhelmingly European genetics? Asterisk, one theory comes from an unexpected place in history, the Khazar kingdom. In the 8th or 9th century AD, a powerful empire in what is now southern Russia reportedly converted to Judaism. Historians like Arthur Kessler, in his book The 13th Tribe, argue that many Ashkenazi Jews are descendants of these Turkic converts, not the original Israelites. If this is true, it would mean that large numbers of European Jews have no bloodline connection to the biblical Hebrews, but rather a religious connection through conversion. Of course, this theory is heavily disputed. Some scholars reject it entirely, pointing instead to centuries of Jewish migration and intermarriage in Europe, but even mainstream historians agree. The majority of Israel's founding population in 1948 had been living in Europe for hundreds of years, removed from the land of Canaan. Asterisk, let's talk science. Genetic studies published in journals like Nature Communications and the American Journal of Human Genetics show that Ashkenazi Jews share some Middle Eastern ancestry, but also significant Southern European and Eastern European DNA. This means that over centuries, Jewish communities in Europe mixed with local populations, creating a very different genetic profile from the people of ancient Judea. So when you see images of white-skinned Israelis on the news, you're not looking at a pure continuation of the ancient Israelites. You're seeing a blend, a product of centuries of exile, migration, and adaptation. Asterisk, but here's where the story gets even more complicated. Not all Jews in Israel are white. The Sephardi Jews from Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East, and the Mizrahi Jews from Iraq, Yemen, and Morocco more closely resembled the ancient Semitic peoples. Yet in modern Israel, Ashkenazi Jews historically held more political power, wealth, and influence, shaping the country's image to the outside world. This raises another question. Is the face of Israel we see on global media actually the full story? Or is it a selective portrayal favoring European-looking Jews? Asterisk, and then there's a piece of the puzzle many people never hear about, the Beta Israel community of Ethiopia. These black Jews, who claim descent from the ancient tribe of Dan, were airlifted to Israel in dramatic rescue missions in the 1980s and 90s. Yet when they arrived, they faced intense racism and discrimination, even forced sterilizations in some cases, according to reports from Haaretz and The Guardian. If Israel is truly the homeland for all Jews, why were the African Jews treated as outsiders? Asterisk, the question of who are the real Israelites isn't just academic, it's political, theological, and deeply emotional. For many Christians, the return of Jews to Israel fulfills biblical prophecy. For Palestinians, it represents displacement and loss. For African Americans and certain Black Hebrew Israelite groups, it raises a provocative claim that the original Israelites were people of color, and that the modern white image is an imposter narrative. Whether you agree with these claims or not, one thing is clear: identity in the Middle East is a battlefield, and history is the weapon. Asterisk, here's something to think about. History is written by the victors, but identity is shaped by those who control the images. When the world thinks Jew, they often picture an Ashkenazi man in a black suit and hat from Brooklyn or Tel Aviv. It's not a dark-skinned shepherd from the hills of ancient Judea. That's not an accident. It's branding, politics, and centuries of cultural influence at work. Asterisk. So, who are the white Israelis? Are they the descendants of ancient Hebrews, carrying forward a 3,000-year-old legacy? Are they the children of European converts who adopted a faith and a history not originally their own? Or are they, like all of us, a complex mix of migration, faith, and adaptation shaped as much by politics as by blood? The truth is messy, but in that mess lies a deeper understanding of how power, history, and identity collide. And if we don't question the story, we risk letting someone else write it for us. This isn't about denying anyone's faith or heritage. It's about asking the questions we're told not to ask. Because in history, the truth doesn't disappear, it just gets buried.